"You're not going to shoot a diplomat, are you?" The alien wheezed, six of its eyes blinking out of sync. Captain Rex Halverson didn't answer. He just laid his weapon on the table, slowly and deliberately, and leaned forward until the edge of his scarred jaw was nearly touching the comm mic. The entire room quieted as his voice carried through the translator. "We're done talking." The interpreter, a rust-red droid shaped like a giant pipe wrench with antennae, froze. Across the table, the three Zarnak envoys, each covered in spiked armor and moist-looking scales, stopped breathing altogether. Somewhere behind them, one of their guards involuntarily clicked his mandibles. 5 seconds later, a siren wailed through the command dome, and 5 seconds after that, everything went sideways. Rex hadn't drawn his sidearm. He didn't need to. The phrase alone, simple as it was, carried weight far beyond the literal. Every soldier, diplomat, officer, or janitor who'd ever served in Earth's interstellar accord knew what "we're done talking" meant. It meant negotiations were over. It meant Earth had decided. It meant brace yourself. Outside, the orbital cannons came online. The Zarnak had been testing human patience for weeks, posturing in every negotiation, flexing claws and making subtle threats about planetary sovereignty. They thought humans would blink first. They thought Earth still played by the rules of the older empires. But the truth was, humanity had stopped blinking after the Neptune massacre. Rex didn't flinch when the first kinetic strike hit the Zarnak cruiser parked above the embassy. The glass dome of the meeting hall trembled, webbing slightly in one corner. One of the envoys stood, hissing. "This is a violation of—" "Nope," Rex said, standing slowly. "This is the reply." By the time he stepped outside, the dome's shields had engaged. The courtyard was in chaos. Marines in exosuits moved like armored wolves, herding civilians and friendlies out through the blast corridors. Overhead, white contrails painted sharp slashes across the lavender sky. Rex stopped next to a young ensign whose helmet looked a size too big. "Get the science team clear," he said. The kid nodded. "Yes, sir. Captain? Is this a full engagement?" "Worse," Rex muttered. "This is clarity." 3 minutes later, the Zarnak flagship lost its upper hull in a flash of silent fire. No dramatics, no broadcasted warnings, just sudden, decisive vaporization. The rest of the fleet began to scatter, as expected. They weren't used to decisive action. Most alien species the humans had encountered preferred long wars of attrition, slow diplomatic maneuvers, or complex ritualized engagements. Humanity, on the other hand, believed in logistics, dirty boots, and removing problems before they escalated. The Zarnak had pushed the boundary one too many times, and now the line was gone. Inside Command Deck 4, aboard the Resolute Hammer, Fleet Admiral Vance watched the battle unfold across several displays. One showed the diplomatic compound. Another tracked Zarnak fleet movements. The third was focused solely on Captain Rex Halverson. "He gave the line?" the Admiral asked, not looking away. "Word for word," replied his communications officer. "Standard phrasing. He even put the gun on the table." "Old school," the Admiral said, almost proud. "I like it." The humans hadn't started this war, and they weren't about to write speeches to explain it either. They didn't have to. Every Alliance species now understood the phrase, "We're done talking," didn't need subtitles anymore. It had entered the galactic lexicon as surely as any battle cry. Back on the ground, Rex jogged toward a half-destroyed watchtower where 4 Zarnak had taken cover. 2 Marines flanked left. Rex didn't wait. He surged forward, drew his rifle, and fired a single round through a loose gap in the wreckage. The alien trying to aim a disruptor cannon never saw it coming. Rex ducked back behind a support beam as plasma scorched overhead. One of the Marines caught up with him. "Sir, Command says the Zarnak Council just sent a message. They want a ceasefire." Rex shook his head. "What do we tell them?" the Marine asked. Rex checked his magazine, then nodded toward the tower. "Tell them they missed their chance." A burst of suppressing fire opened the path, and they moved in tandem, clearing the position with practiced precision. The fight wasn't about honor. It wasn't about territory. It was about showing the Zarnak, and anyone else watching, that Earth didn't bluff. And once that line was crossed, they wouldn't back down. From orbit, the Resolute Hammer released a second wave of drop pods. Each one streaked through the upper atmosphere like meteorites, carrying reinforced infantry to key positions. They weren't there to take prisoners. They were there to end the war before it started. The Zarnak outposts along the outer moons had been expecting drawn-out negotiations. They'd stocked food and drafted demands, but they hadn't prepared for this. Instantaneous retaliation without ceremony. Within 28 minutes, 7 of their bases were reduced to molten scars. In a small war room deep in one of Earth's fortified bunkers, an AI named Cortez reviewed battlefield data and adjusted predictive models. Probability of Zarnak's surrender within next hour, 93.4%, it reported. Recalculate if Captain Halverson goes off script, said one analyst. The AI blinked. Then probability rises to 99.2%. Rex Halverson wasn't bred for diplomacy. He was a soldier, built from a long line of men who believed in action over argument. His grandfather had been a grunt on Mars during the skirmish of the Three Suns. His father, a logistics officer during the purge of Epsilon Drift. And Rex was the hammer that followed silence. Inside a partially collapsed bunker near the former Zarnak command point, Rex moved cautiously down a smoke-filled corridor, his boots crunching on shattered stone. There were signs of retreat, hastily discarded armor plates, smeared fluids, the faint scuttling of wounded troops limping into tunnels. He didn't fire. Not yet. Because even though the shooting had started, Rex knew the real message had already been delivered. It wasn't about killing every enemy soldier. It wasn't about revenge. It was about reminder. Humans didn't escalate. They concluded. And once they said they were done talking, everything after that was a lesson. The tunnel sloped downward, cut into the moon rock with more haste than precision. Captain Halverson moved steadily, rifle tight against his shoulder, eyes scanning every flicker of movement through the smoke. The 2 Marines trailing him, Holt and Jennings, kept their spacing, their boots muffled by ash. Above ground, the war was becoming a rout. Down here, it was cleanup. A cluster of Zarnak soldiers had fled into this warren minutes after the bombardments began. Most humans would have waited. Rex didn't believe in waiting. "Movement," Jennings whispered, tapping his visor. Rex raised a hand. He could hear it too now. Scraping metal, panicked breathing, that faint wet clicking sound the Zarnak made when cornered. No language barrier in fear. He rounded the bend. Ahead, 5 Zarnak stood in a half-lit cavern, hunched around a power console. One aimed a weapon, crude, short-range, and uncharged. Another held up a flat hand. "Do not kill," it rasped through a translator pinned to its chest. "We surrender. You are superior. We recognize this now." Rex lowered his weapon slightly but didn't put it away. "I'm not here to collect confessions," he said. One of them hissed something in its native tongue. The one with the translator tried again. "We only wanted the moons, not war. Our leaders misjudged your kind. You do not hesitate." "That's your second mistake," Rex replied. "Your first was thinking we'd negotiate while you armed fleets behind our backs." He nodded once toward Holt, who stepped forward and secured the group with polymer cuffs. There were no beatings, no shouting, just speed and control, human control. Because war for Earth wasn't chaos. It was planning, delivered like gravity. Jennings checked a side tunnel. "Clear," he said. Rex glanced at the console the Zarnak had been trying to access. It pulsed faintly, running a local network scan. "Dump it and forward to command," Rex ordered. "If they were pinging off-world assets, we need to know what's left." Outside, the sun of Jatar's moon dipped toward the horizon, casting long red shadows across the smoking terrain. Dozens of plumes marked strike zones, each one a coordinated hit on munitions caches, fleet docks, or command nodes. The Zarnak weren't just defeated, they were paralyzed. On board the Resolute Hammer, Admiral Vance was reviewing real-time feed from orbital recon drones. The war room was silent, punctuated only by soft pings and status reports. "Captain Halverson has secured the central bunker. 10 hostiles detained, no casualties on our side," reported the operations chief. "Any word from the Zarnak High Matriarch?" Vance asked without looking up. "Still hiding on that relic cruiser drifting over Sector 6. Refuses to answer direct comms. They've started sending messages through third-party species. Peace feelers." Vance grunted. They always want to talk when they're cornered. But do we respond? Asked one of the aides. Vance shook his head. Only if Halverson says something new. Until then, this is his dialogue. Down below, Rex climbed back to the surface, helmet clipped to his side. The air was heavy with dust, the ground warm from lingering blast heat. Around him, Earth forces moved like an organism. Drop ships touching down, medics tending to light injuries, engineers setting up signal repeaters to expand communications reach. This wasn't occupation. It wasn't conquest. It was closure. The Zarnak had violated accords. They had snuck weapons onto treaty worlds, interfered in allied systems, and gambled that humans, being relatively young in galactic diplomacy, would flinch or fail to respond properly. They'd seen humanity's kindness and assumed it was weakness. Now they were learning it was choice. A tremor shook the ground. Rex turned just as the old Zarnak relay tower collapsed in the distance, the result of a delayed demolition charge. Dust rippled outward in a slow wave. The Marines nearby barely glanced up. "Sir," Holt said, jogging over. "Command just cleared us for push into Zone 3. You want us leading that?" "No," Rex said, grabbing his rifle again. "I do." Zone 3 was one of the last active holdouts, a reinforced canyon base once considered unbreachable. It had been built into a cliff face, shielded from aerial scans and buried under dense native foliage. Until today, humans had respected its status as a diplomatic storage site. But once the war broke out, scans revealed it was stockpiled with fusion-tipped warheads. No more diplomacy. Rex loaded 2 extra mags into his belt and led the charge. The route to Zone 3 wasn't long, but it was contested. Zarnak sharpshooters delayed the first approach, their plasma bolts searing through underbrush and turning rocks into temporary cover. But humans didn't dig in. They moved, always forward, always calculating. By the time Rex reached the outer gate, most resistance had fallen back. One well-placed breaching charge later, the gate was open, and inside, silence. The base was cold, not abandoned, powered even, but strangely still. Rex paused. "Something's off," he said. "Holt, thermal?" Holt pulled up his visor display. "Minimal heat signatures, sir. One concentrated chamber." Rex nodded. "Let's meet whoever thinks this is still a negotiation." They advanced past abandoned consoles and flickering wall screens. The central chamber was deep, carved out of black rock and ringed with alien symbols that glowed faint green. And in the center stood a single figure. Not a soldier, not a worker, but a Sarnak elder, tall, thin, robe flowing with ceremonial threads. His hands were empty. "I will speak," the elder said. "You already did," Rex replied. The elder's facial slits flexed. "This does not have to continue." "You're right," Rex said. "It doesn't." He stepped forward until they were nearly eye level. "Your kind gambled that we'd be afraid to offend. You tried to fight a shadow war, all while shaking hands in open court. You counted on our restraint. We expected reason." "You got reason," Rex interrupted. "Now you're getting the consequence." He turned to go. "Wait," the elder called. "If you leave now, the others will not stop." Rex paused. "Then they'll learn," he said. "Same way you just did." Outside, the sky was darkening. Drop pods were already inbound for the next objective. Fleet Command didn't need to send more orders. The signal had already gone out across every channel, every faction, every species still watching from their cold, quiet stations. When a human says, "We're done talking," there is only silence next, and the sound of consequences. Rex stood at the edge of the ravine, where Zone 3 had once held its line. Behind him, scorched debris still crackled in the wind. The Zarnak elder had been taken into custody without struggle, escorted up to the Resolute Hammer, where other high-value targets were being interrogated. The humans didn't need torture. They had something far more effective: certainty. That was what rattled their enemies the most. Not the weapons, not the numbers. It was that, once the decision came down, the humans meant it. There were no appeals, no stalling tactics, no room left to maneuver. Back at the forward base, Rex took a moment to rest beneath the half-buried wing of a crashed enemy dropship. Holt tossed him a ration bar. He caught it mid-air, peeled it with one hand, and took a slow bite. Jennings approached with a datapad. "Sir, transmission just came in from the Zarnak matriarch." Rex gave him a look. "Still trying?" "She's not the only one," Jennings replied. 14 systems have opened comms channels since the ceasefire was called. They're asking what your terms are." Rex chewed a moment longer, then wiped a smear of ash off his glove. "Tell him we're still not talking." Jennings hesitated. "You sure that'll send the right message?" Rex gave him a look. "It's not a message. It's a statement." Jennings nodded, walking back toward the uplink tent to relay the captain's response. In orbit, the Resolute Hammer glided silently over the moon's surface, accompanied by 6 destroyers and 2 carrier-class vessels. No one fired. They didn't need to. The war was functionally over, not because every Zarnak had surrendered, but because none of them were willing to test the alternative. Fleet Admiral Vance stood by the observation window, watching the planet turn slowly beneath him. "We're receiving diplomatic envoys from the Tanari, the Filari Consortium, even a few Revik warlords," his aide reported. "They're not aligned with the Zarnak, but they're requesting clarification on human intent." Vance raised a brow. "Let me guess. They're worried we're coming for them next. Some are offering cooperation. Others just want to make sure they're not on the wrong list." Vance took a sip of water and glanced at the blank comm screen. "They weren't worried when we were helping terraform backwater colonies. They weren't worried when we sent medical ships into plague zones. But now, after we finally draw a line?" "Yes, sir." The Admiral folded his arms. "Tell them Earth has no interest in conquest. But if someone fires the first shot and tries to hide behind bureaucracy, then we end it. Cleanly." Back on the surface, Rex and his team moved into reclamation protocol. They set up beacon nodes around key infrastructure sites. Civilian teams would follow soon. Reconstruction would begin. Earth wouldn't leave the moons in ruins. That wasn't the point. The point was that if someone started a fire near Earth's borders, Earth would walk straight into the flames, through them if necessary, and then rebuild whatever was left. Stronger, smarter, quieter. Near the crash site, a small Zarnak boy, barely taller than Rex's knee, emerged from a hiding hole. He was thin, covered in soot, unarmed, scared. 2 Marines raised weapons reflexively. "Stand down," Rex ordered. He knelt slowly, lowering himself until he was eye level with the child. He didn't smile, just watched. The boy looked up, eyes wide and trembling. "You lost today," Rex said softly, "but you're still breathing. That matters." The boy didn't respond. He just blinked. "Go on," Rex said, nodding toward the direction of the evacuation corridor, where other detained civilians were being processed. "Run along." The boy hesitated, then scurried off. Rex stood, brushed the dust from his knees, and turned back to the team. "All right, let's finish this." They moved with purpose. Cataloging, confirming, transmitting. No speeches, no dramatics. Just the slow, steady work of closing the door behind a war. By the following sunrise, the last Zarnak gun had fallen silent. Not from obliteration, from decision. Their leadership issued a planetary broadcast through neutral relay satellites, declaring an unconditional withdrawal from all contested systems. Their fleet captains were ordered to disarm. Their border stations blinked offline one by one. In less than 72 hours, the war that had threatened to spiral into years of trench diplomacy was over. Not with peace talks, with clarity. Aboard the Resolute Hammer, a new log entry was recorded into the Galactic Accord Registry. Entry number 8892-Delta Species, Human Status, Enforced Sovereignty Protocols. Designation, Preemptive Retaliatory Engagement. Validated Final Notation, Human Diplomat Halverson invoked termination phrase. Galactic consensus reached, no further clarification required. When that entry was transmitted across the Galactic Relay Network, it reached every species that had ever attended a peace summit with a human. Some read it in silence. Some reread it twice. A few deleted it and pretended it didn't exist. But all of them understood it, because everyone in the galaxy now knew what it meant when a human said, "We're done talking," and none of them wanted to hear it again.